Hey folks, Dave the Not So Evil Viking 13 here with a look at Battlefield 1 in the Name of the Tsar, the most recent DLC / expansion pack for Battlefield 1, of course. It's been out for quite a few weeks now for premium members, and just recently it became available for all members of the public to purchase, and they've even had a demo running this week where you could try all of the DLC and all of the premium content for free. I of course remain a big fan of Battlefield 1, and so I wanted to give you guys a look at what this DLC offers, some recent price changes to Battlefield 1, and what the overall experience of the game is like right now in 2017 here in the fall. DICE has claimed that the In the Name of the Tsar DLC is the largest Battlefield expansion pack in their history, and after playing it for quite a few weeks now, I think they are actually correct. Outside of just size though, let's dive in and take a look at what you're going to get for your money. First of all, you're going to get a lot more for your money just because the price of the game and the premium expansion pack has dropped considerably as a lead up to this release. You can now get the Battlefield 1 Revolution Edition, which includes the base game as well as all DLC, for $60 total. That is a fantastic value as you're only paying essentially $30 for each half of the game. As you might expect, fans who hadn't bought the premium version of the game were quite happy at this news, while premium pass holders were a bit miffed. All they've gotten along the way is essentially a couple of extra premium battle packs per month, a couple of double XP weekends, and a few other odds and ends along the way, but for the most part, I don't really think you've gotten that $50 value if you paid for your premium pass for Battlefield 1 separate from the game, say around the end of the year last year. I do have a press version of the game that I got last year as a review copy that came with a premium pass, so as you can tell, I don't really have a whole lot of investment in buying the premium pass myself, but I have bought premium passes for Battlefield 3 and 4, thankfully not for Hardline, and I can understand where some people might be upset over that lack of value, but I think we should be okay with this as a community, this price drop for the Battlefield 1 Revolution Edition, just because I think this might finally be DICE, and especially I would say EA, moving away from that premium pass model for Battlefield. I really hope that we're going to see that go away in the future, and I think a lot of other Battlefield commentators have also agreed that that's what things are going towards. It's going to hurt in the short term if you've bought that premium pass, but in the long term, we'll have a less split community if the game is just the game, kind of like Titanfall 2, for example. But enough talk about the price changes, let's talk about this DLC specifically. Battlefield 1 in the Name of the Tsar comes with 6 new maps, 2 of which actually feature the Russian Revolution, as I discussed in an earlier video back at the end of August. So you've got 4 maps where you have Russian forces fighting the Austro-Hungarians in those Eastern Front battles, and then you also have 2 maps where it's the Soviets, the Bolsheviks, versus the Russian White Army, which supported the Tsar. Go check out that video for a more in-depth discussion of what that means and the unique take that that brings to the game. Besides the 6 new maps, the DLC comes with a total of 11 new weapons and a few new vehicles, although it is just 3. You've got the new heavy bomber, the heavy armored car. There's also a amphibious landing craft, which is actually only seen on one map, Albion, and while it is cool to participate in an amphibious invasion, don't expect to see these landing craft on any other maps. There's also one new game mode, Supply Drop, where each team fights over a supply drop that has fallen out of the sky with a parachute, and when it pops open, your team gets supplies to help fight for the next supply drop. There's also one new stationary weapon, also only seen on Albion actually, a powerful coastal gun battery. I almost feel like Albion at this point is its own little mini DLC because it has a number of unique things just seen on that map. Comparing the map selection here in the Name of the Tsar to the They Shall Not Pass French DLC back in March, I think In the Name of the Tsar has a definite advantage just because it is launching with 6, whereas They Shall Not Pass had 4 maps at launch and then 2 night maps that came out over the summer. And of course, it's World War I, you have no night vision devices, and it's just a bit of eye strain for me to try and play those. And of course, you have players cranking their brightness up to get an unfair advantage. On the other hand, In the Name of the Tsar comes with all 6 maps right here at launch, and they're all quite enjoyable. I think really all that's lacking for these 6 maps is there's no vehicle-based map where you have multiple tanks going at it, kind of like the Soissons map for the French DLC. Let's focus down on those 6 maps just briefly for each one. In TSARITSYN, which pits the Red Army versus the White Army, Russian versus Russian, it is one of the most fun close combat maps that I've seen in the game so far, with one big problem of balancing. It only has 3 flags, so for you to actually have an enjoyable match on this map, the teams have to be perfectly balanced to get a back and forth fight going over B, to possibly get some back capping going on if one team is holding that center point for too long. Otherwise, it is just a map full of camping. One team steamrolls the other, and spawn trapping is very, very common on TSARITSYN. Outside of that, great weather effects, lots of thick snowstorms very often that you see on this map, a lot of trench works, and a lot of intense, very fun up-close combat. VOLGA River is a large infantry-focused map, with just a couple of tank spawns for each team, and even then only the land ships, which have the tank hunter or mortar options, so you're not going to see tanks absolutely massacring infantry in this map. It has a wild amount of flags, and a ton of trench works for infantry to hide in, as well as lots of destroyed buildings. You can see those crumbling chimneys poking up through this area where there was already a massive battle fought. Not much to say about this one, nothing super exciting to it, but a go-to map for some fun infantry trench action. LUPKOW Pass, our 3rd map, has been seen over and over again ever since August because it was released early for Premium Pass owners, even before the DLC actually officially launched. This one I really like. There's tons of cover for infantry, and even though occasionally, and I say this as a pilot, planes can dominate a bit too easily on this map, infantry can actually hide quite well in all the dense pine forests on this map as long as you keep your head down. This map features some absolutely stunning mountain vistas, some great weather effects, and some very beautiful picturesque streams up there in the mountains. This is a map that I could definitely just wander around in for a while on my own outside of fighting on it. Then you've got ALBION. This map brings back some serious memories of Battlefield 2, and I think it might be my favorite for the DLC, although again, I really do enjoy all 6 of these maps quite a lot. ALBION is a large series of islands, with the Austro-Hungarian army invading from the landing craft offshore, fighting the Russians who have some massive coastal guns on an island just off of their shore. The biggest plus for this map is just the size, I think. I've actually seen people flanking around quite often, and you'll occasionally see snipers hiding way off in the rocks on a small little island, stuff that I really haven't seen since Battlefield 2 because generally Battlefield 3, 4, and Battlefield 1 maps have, even in Conquest, a pretty limited play area. ALBION opens things up a bit, and while you do have to move carefully if you're out of cover, I just love the ability to go just about anywhere. It also appears to be surprisingly balanced. Even though the Russians get that one extra gimme flag, a strong attack from the landing craft that flanks around the Russians' lines can really swing the game quite easily. GALICIA has been a very controversial map. It's also a large map, but it's also very open and quite flat. It's a bit of a sniper's paradise, and additionally you have the artillery truck spawns, 3 for each side, and a number of plane spawns for each side too. So you've got lots of snipers and artillery trucks, which are basically the vehicle equivalent of a long-range sniper. If you stick with your squad though, and use the quite frequent trench networks as cover, along with the shell holes, you can kind of get a flow going as you move back and forth from point to point, and you'll get better at avoiding those snipers. Hopefully your team has a few snipers of your own, keeping the enemy's heads pinned down in their trenches. Our final map, BRUSILOV Keep, is a picturesque town in the mountains with a setting sun in the background that provides, again, a primarily infantry-focused gameplay experience. There's a chance of 1 armored car or artillery truck per team, and you've got some cavalry, and the chance of a train, of course, but for the most part, you're going to be fighting on foot. And it has some of the most interesting fighting areas for infantry that I've seen in any of the villages on any of these maps. Lots of verticality, lots of stream beds and little gullies to hide in, and a number of destructible buildings along the way. Honestly guys, outside of those balance issues on TSARITSYN, I really have no major complaints about any of these maps. They are all quite a bit of fun to play, in my opinion. Let's talk about those 11 new weapons next. I'm not going to go into extreme detail on these weapons, but I just want to give you guys an overview of what's offered in the DLC so you can get an idea of what it's actually worth. With those 11 new weapons, you've got a couple for each class. So, no matter what your favorite class might be, odds are you're going to find a new weapon that suits your playstyle. Additionally, there's 2 new pistols, the Nagant 1895 revolver, one of my personal favorites, and the Oberez, which is a sawed-off Mosin Nagant in the form of a sawed-off pistol, basically. Of the 11 new weapons, some are definitely more enjoyable for me than others, but just like the maps, I haven't found one that I didn't enjoy. Battlefield 1, in my opinion, already has a decent amount of weapons. There's plenty to choose from. I don't think you need Battlefield 4's gluttonous supply of weapons, and so I think 11 is a good number, again with just a couple to pick from for each class. Some of my personal favorites include the Mosin Nagant, which is not exceptional in any way, but is a great all-around average rifle, and of course, thematically, definitely fits the Eastern Front. Again, big fan of that Nagant 1895 revolver, and the double-barrel shotguns, both the buckshot and slug versions, are some of my favorite shotguns now. I love the high damage output and only having the 2 shots. It's a very unusual weapon compared to the other shotguns in the game. You've really got to plan your engagements much more carefully with just those 2 shots. Additionally, there is a C93 suppressed carbine for the tanker and pilot kits, which adds a neat twist as it's the only multiplayer suppressed weapon in the game. There's one more thing I want to cover as far as value goes, and that's the new game mode. I've played about an hour of it, nothing exceptional, nothing bad, and honestly, I wish that DICE didn't feel like they had to add a new game mode with every single DLC launch, because these don't stay populated for very long. And I loved the Frontlines game mode from the They Shall Not Pass French DLC. I would actually love if DICE focused on just making more maps for Frontlines, as I think it's one of the most enjoyable modes outside of Operations. Which, speaking of Operations, that's the last thing I want to talk about. The DLC does come with 2 new operations with 2 maps each. Strangely, LUPKOW Pass and ALBION, 2 of the more unique maps in the DLC, are not featured in any operation. Perhaps we'll see them in a future edition. As far as the 2 operations that did come with this DLC are concerned, there are some balancing issues. There's some nasty spawn killing and choke point problems. Most of the maps are city-based with some very tight corridors and almost no flanking options, and I think they really need a couple of reworks. I've had some really amazing games in Operations in this DLC, but I've also had some very frustrating games, and some of my good games I could tell were probably frustrating for the enemy team. Speaking of upcoming changes, as much as I've been enjoying this DLC, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that there were some very bad server lag issues when the premium version launched into the premium early access. For a couple of weeks, there was an issue where servers could get way behind with the hit notifications and kill notifications. I saw kills popping up sometimes 30 seconds after I actually got them. Additionally, hit registration got wonky at times, and even right now as I record this, weeks after the official launch of the DLC, some players are still getting some really nasty ping problems and stuff like that. This has been, I would say, the roughest launch of any DLC or content for Battlefield 1 if we include the base launch of the game, but things are shaping up quickly, and I hope that things continue to improve because, in my opinion, the DLC is well worth the money. It's just a lot of fun, and as DICE promised, it is a lot of content. I think they have definitely delivered on that mark. The long wait, I guess, was actually worth it in the end. The community is still pretty strong. There's a ton of players on all platforms. I'm also really looking forward to some upcoming changes to the movement and weapons in Battlefield 1. Just some overall changes to how the game works as a whole. Right now, The AD spam, where on PC especially you can just hit AD, you know, left, right, and side strafe rapidly. It looks very, very jerky to another player trying to shoot you, and in my opinion, it's just a little bit of an exploit. It makes the gameplay just way too fast. If you combine that with the ability to crouch slide and abuse that, where if you are, you know, running and you slide, run and slide, and run and slide, if you start canceling those slides and time it just right, you turn your character into a jack-in-the-box and become nearly impossible to hit. And it makes a aggressive playstyle combined with that AD spam way too powerful. And it's hilarious that in a game about World War I, even a riff on World War I, so heavily favors a charge out of the trenches, zigzag, and slide your way to victory playstyle. It's just a bit much right now. I'm looking forward to seeing that turned down and just lowered a bit. Hopefully, once the AD spam and slide abuse is cut back a bit, the gameplay will be a little bit less janky and ridiculous looking. Alright guys, that has been yet another love letter from Dave to Battlefield 1. Hope you've enjoyed, and I hope that if you were on the fence about the DLC, this has at least given you a bit more perspective to make your own purchasing decision. Maybe I'll see you out there on the battlefield. For now, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time.